What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the Esports Narrative. What's up, everybody? This is episode 28 of the Esports Narrative, and tonight I have Justin Jacobson joining me. Justin, welcome to the show. Thanks for spending some time with us tonight.
Thanks. Thank you, Spencer, for having me. I'm excited to talk a little esports with you guys.
Awesome. So first, I'd like to just hear kind of your origin story or your esports narrative, how you got into video games and why you're interested in it now from a legal aspect.
So I pretty much would say I kind of grew up in the entertainment business, throughout college and law school. I worked at different labels at MTV, for ASCAP, I managed a DJ, and then eventually I kind of went to law school. So more recently, I've kind of, set up my law firm in New York City, working in the entertainment, sports, and esports realm. In addition, I have my own marketing company called Label 55, where we work with, talent, brand development. So kind of through the years and more recently, I've linked up with the APE esports agencies, agencies for professional esports, and I'm going to be, heading their expansion as a player agent and counsel, as, kind of setting up a New York presence. So, I've always been a gamer all of my life, starting with Nintendo to Sega, N64. I played StarCraft and StarCraft 2 pretty regularly, and throughout my life I've always played Madden and NBA, 2K, and FIFA. So,
Nice.
While I'm not on the level of these guys, I understand the sitting there for 3-4 hours with your friends and playing Madden and, the excitement that kind of comes with that. So, I've kind of grown up with video games. I would say most of my age and generation, you had Nintendo with Dunk Hunt, and then you had Sega, and then you had N64, and then it was like you're an Xbox or a PlayStation guy. I went the Xbox route, but, kids went their PS2 route. And, more recently, how I kind of got into the esports realm was, I would say, almost a year ago, I kind of started to see the explosion and started to explore the industry, especially the legal and business development side of things, to kind of get the lay of the land, see who, kind of the power players are, who represents whom, and, see if there's a niche or a lane that I could fit in. It's kind of how I tried to approach, the music and other professional sports, as I work with some NBA players, some NFL, and MLB stars. So, I kind of found ways for me to help them. And one thing I kind of noticed, and I think is prevalent in this industry, is that most of the big organizations, the major people, the people that are getting the multi-million-dollar investments, they're the ones who have the ability and, the wherewithal and the knowledge to get professional representation, to spend the money, where maybe in the short term it's like, oh, I really have to spend this much money, or like it seems like a lot, but the potential downfalls of not doing it properly and how these things can impact everything going forward, just really shined a light of what was going on. And, from my understanding, most of the top, legal established people are more on the organization side, and there needs to be some additional competent people that have worked with talent. So coming from, where I represent musicians, DJs, producers, songwriters, fashion designers, to, working with this kind of talent, professional gamers, it just seemed like a transition that made sense. In addition, working with the brands, especially in the lifestyle space that I do, this is just like a new market for them. There's such a huge kind of influx of Gillette and Mercedes and Audi and all these main brand people that have really stayed to like the major four sports, big A-list celebrities and, movie premieres kind of things. But now you see them as big name sponsors, 6-figure plus deals at these esports things. So it just kind of really showed me that there's a lot of potential if the right people are working and, doing it properly.
Awesome.
And I think that, that's definitely what kind of led me into it.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a really cool story. And I like how you mentioned that you played a wide range of games, not just any one game. What's been your favorite game to play over the years, and what's been your favorite game to watch played?
Well, I mean, I've definitely, I'm a huge football fan, so, I probably have Madden going back to like Madden 96, John Madden on the cover. So I probably most all of those years. And I guess there's some years where you kind of alternate because it's like you can't get Madden 2007, 2008, 2009, 2000. It just, something about that rubs me the wrong way a little. But I would say that Madden is a constant for me. And then there's times where, me and my friends used to sit for, my basement for hours playing StarCraft. Like, from, when we got home from school until, like, asleep at 10, 11, 12 at night, Friday, Saturday, you're playing, 10 hours straight. Where, like, you're forced. And then it's funny that, like, StarCraft 2 kind of came out, a little bit later when I was in law school. So, because I wasn't really, going out as much, it wasn't during college or anything where, like, you're more preoccupied with other things, it kind of caught on again where, like, I would sit in, with my friends and play for 4 hours. And,
yep.
It just...
Nice.
But even right now, I want to get up there, Control P, get those probes going.
Mm-hmm.
So, and watching it, I've started to watch some of it more. I think Madden is probably my favorite just because, it's like watching football. And, StarCraft is pretty cool because it's, like, interesting to watch their strategies and to kind of see how it's played at these professional top people playing it. Like me and my friends playing it is one thing. We thought we were good. Like, these people just blow us away. And it's, impressive to be that talented. That, you're noticeably better.
Awesome. So. Now, with your work, what do you spend most of your time on? I was looking at your website, and there's things ranging from copyright and trademark to negotiations and contract reviews. Like, on a day-to-day basis, what do you spend most of your time on?
I would say most of it is definitely spent on contract review and negotiation and just kind of general client advice. It's, most of my work is transactional. I do handle some litigation, so I do have some matters pending that, when you have discovery going, that takes up a good amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But then also what coincides with a lot of that client counseling is trademarks and copyrights, where it's like, okay, you're now going to do a record deal. You're going to do this player contract. Okay, do you have trademark in your name? Like, let's make sure that's protected. Do you have your corporation and LLC, all that stuff, their financial stuff in order? And that way they kind of work with each other. So, in the music realm or any kind of design that's unique, you work on the contract with the designer, you work on the licensing deal to, distribute the product, but you also make sure the actual product is protected, and that's kind of where the copyright comes in. So they really kind of all work within each other,
mm-hmm.
which is what I think is nice about the space that I've explored and positioned myself in.
Yeah, and that's something I want to touch on a little bit, is like from the team side or the organization side of, the copywriting, trademark negotiations, the contract review side of things. But first, I'd like to just get your opinion on what's like the current state of intellectual property in esports. Like, it's a very rapidly growing sector. There's a lot of opportunity, and there's going to be a lot of mistakes made. And I'm sure some of that will come in the form of, copyright infringement and trademarks, failure to uphold contract terms and things like that. What's like from what you're seeing and diving into the industry, what's the current state of things right now?
I mean, the interesting thing is that the basis of everything that everyone's playing is intellectual property. Like, the actual game, the software that you're playing is a protected, licensable entity. So it's unique in that no other professional sports, baseball, football, is the basis of their sport protected. So it puts the organizations, the Riots, the Blizzards, in a huge power position that the NFL, while they are the dominant force in football, the XFL, the AFL, all these secondary leagues are able to exist and to play football. You know what I mean? Whereas you can't start your own Overwatch league without a license from Blizzard, because what you're displaying and monetizing is their protected IP. The way the game works, the way the code works, the images you see on the screen, that's all protected. So, I think that it's funny that the basis of the industry is IP. But regarding the players and the teams in particular, they pick these names that sound cool, but you know what? They sound cool and great for a reason. Because they may be pretty common, they may be pretty generic, or there may be other people that have made their team and have gone to it first. And, to not search and make sure that the team name that you're going to choose is protected before doing it, when your whole entire social media, your imagery, your logos, everything is based on this name. And, for some really cool ones like Laser Kittens and, Unicorns of Love, like they have really cool names, cool marketing, like it all fits into the brand perfectly. And to not have the basis of your entire brand, which is what you're trying to make money off of, properly protected just seems, foolish. And a lot of these people are like, oh, well, a search is this, and a registration is this and that. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you put $5,000, $10,000 for the legal, whatever it is, even potentially less than that if you're just like one or two things. Because ultimately, the mistake you make then could cost you so much more later that it's foolish and borderline negligent to kind of proceed like that. And like there's some pretty interesting names, some I would say not the top established teams, but some more up and coming that they have players, they have infrastructure, like they're doing things. You know what I mean? They're not these top teams, but they're competing in secondary tournaments. They have that they're maybe winning $5,000-$10,000. But you know what? We're doing that 3-4 times a month over a couple months span. You're starting to get some streaming money. Maybe get a sponsor here or there. Like things start to roll in. You're starting to actually monetize it. And if you get to the point where like you're hopefully going to become a bigger entity, maybe you're purchased by something, maybe your team out of nowhere does well in a tournament, and now there's a lot more spotlight on you, and you don't even have the basis of that protected, that could be an issue. And there's a team right now that is pretty big in, I would say, Hungary. It's a pretty big CSGO team. And, like, if you type in their name, there's 4 other esports teams that are kind of similar or have the same, they're obviously the bigger, more established one. Like, it's pretty obvious. But that's not how trademark rights work, especially in the U.S. It kind of first use is kind of based on, but, registration is a very powerful thing that kind of gives you priority on your first use.
Now, how do you check to see if a trademark exists, or like if a name, a team name or an organization name or a brand name or a logo is already in use? Like, what's your advice for someone to look into that? Or how they would?
You do what's called a trademark search, a trademark screening search, where, depending on what country you're looking for protection in, or, if you're planning to be a, major multinational organization, you maybe do searches, US, Canada, the EU. You kind of see what some of the major markets, Australia, if you're going to be an English-speaking kind of team, or if you're just based out of France, you see what's going on in France and maybe America, maybe, London. So, there are firms, attorneys, or just kind of trademark services that will search the USPTO databases, the other kind of general state registrations. And then, in addition, you kind of like a Google search. You see what comes up when you type different things. And what I always tell my clients when we're trying to pick a brand name and deciding one, check out what's going on with Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. See if you can even have the esports narrative on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, where you can have this uniform brand name on everything. Because it starts getting weird when you have esports dash narrative and narrative esport, when you start having a disjunction of the brand. It doesn't look as clean on marketing. It makes it a little bit harder for people to follow you. So that's kind of, they work with each other. The official search, so you know what's actually registered and out there, and then more of an informal kind of internet market research search to see if, there's other people that are out there that are maybe not doing it. Why would you even want to go down a route that potentially could lead to an issue with these people? Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like good business planning. And, the advice is to figure it out before you go. Because once you go, you start spending money, you start building momentum, all these things. It's really hard to go back and now you're a new thing. Or worse, you get a nice cease and desist letter from somebody and now you have to pay someone like me to try to help you guide you out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And the $2,000-$3,000 that you didn't spend now is at a zero or worse later, depending on how much bigger you got. You know, the more bigger and famous you got, the more they're damaged, the more they could get from you. So, you know, that is definitely in the trademark branding. But the other kind of things that I work on a lot is in the contract review, especially on behalf of players and, you know, managers and streamers and all that. So really, that kind of comes down to the same idea of not wanting to spend, or it's like, oh, I'm getting a $3,000 signing bonus. Why am I going to give you $1,500? You know, like they don't realize the long-term value of not having someone in their corner, not understanding the full extent of the agreement. There are little things that the other side is almost willing to give, knowing that they can't be that extreme. But if you don't ask for it, why are they just going to give it to you? And like that's always been my kind of philosophy on negotiations. Like, you don't ask for something completely outlandish. Like, you don't ask for $100 million when they're talking 300,000. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you come in outer space, that's how they're going to deal with you. But if they're talking 20,000 and you come with 24, 25, something that's in the realm of possibility, the worst they can say is no. They're going to pull the deal solely based on you negotiating, which is what this is called. You know, if it was called take it or leave it, then that's what it would be.
Right.
But as a player and any talent or any individual, employee, anyone should always have someone on their side who is a third party, who's unbiased, who sees it for what it is and can say, like, yeah, like, this is what could happen. This is the potential issues. Like, right now I have a pretty, up-and-coming Maxim model who's like a fitness model and musician, whatever. And there's this management people, and 5 months ago, oh, they're going to great, da-da-da-da-da-da. They do all this. Lo and behold, 2 days ago, Justin, they're not doing anything, da-da-da-da. They gave me this thing that's terrible. I couldn't go further. Like, we need to get rid of them. And luckily, I was very much like, okay, well, here's the deal. Like, if they really think they're so good, then they should be able to do this and this and this. So if they can't do this, then we should be able to get out of the agreement and, give us some ways to really get out of it. Mm. She kind of says to me, Justin, like, I had one of my friends look over the agreement, and all they had to say was, you have a really good lawyer. And I was just like, yeah, like, you have to be prepared that the best case scenario is probably not what's going to happen. And you need someone who is like, okay, well, that's great that he's telling you all this stuff, but what if this, and this happens? Oh, okay, yeah. And a lot of these players are just signing these agreements that are very overbearing, very unfair. And what I've learned is that these people that are representing the bigger organizations, they want someone like me, someone competent, to be there on the other side, to make these contracts much more ironclad. The last thing you want is, oh, I'm a 19-year-old kid, they told me this, and this, and they said sign it right now, like, whatever. I didn't have time to think about it, I was just so excited. And the last thing you want is to have to deal with that headache if you're a team. Or if you're a player who signed an agreement that, like, oh no, like, they own the exclusive rights to this, like, you get yourself in a situation that, like, you signed an agreement, you were of conscious mind, you didn't think you needed an attorney or other representation, and you did it. And that, to me, is very short-sighted. Like, if you think this is going to be all the money you ever make and this, that, and the third, then okay, whatever. But if you see this as building a career and going forward, then, the basis of your existence, your player contract, your exclusive sponsorship deal, your team name, like, these are things that you just can't, deal with later, or, think that you could Google and figure it out on your own.
So would you say that's one of the biggest mistakes, is just not looking over contracts or not taking the time to do due diligence and really look these things over?
I mean, I think that it's more of, as an attorney, someone who specializes in these fields, every single day, you're looking at these kind of agreements, you're understanding the way the whole entire business works, from streaming income to sponsorship, to individual sponsorship, to organization sponsorship. to the way free agency works, to the way tax and international stuff comes into play, to the way all the visa stuff comes into play. So you're understanding and balancing all of these considerations when you're making an agreement. But most people, especially, a player who's, like I said, 19, 20, we're not talking about 26-year-old, 30-year-old attorneys coming out of law school who went to college, went to law school, and worked in, talking about kids who maybe didn't go to college, maybe coming out of high school, they're not as experienced in these negotiations against businessmen who, this is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of don't really understand the legalese. You don't see how broad things are. And you think, oh, yeah, like they said, it's this, this, and this. But you know what? They can tell you whatever they want to say. But all that really matters is what's in the contract. And there's a line in the contract that says anything that was said outside of this is null and void. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's even a clause that says anything we talked about outside of here isn't applicable. And this is our entire agreement. And have a nice day.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the end of the day, and why I've joined this agency and I'm really passionate about what they're doing, their mission is that that's what they're about. They're like, okay, we know that the players aren't getting the 6-figure, 7-figure deals that NFL players are getting. They're not getting $2 million signing bonuses. This is a different, this is different e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
No one's getting $10 million deals, $100 million. If you're getting a 6-figure salary for a month or, something around that range, that's a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is, I don't understand it's scalable, but the idea is that it has to kind of start somewhere. That all of these other major organizations, every league, NFL, MLB, FIFA, all of them have these authorized player representation. It's pretty much really hard for any of these players to negotiate anyway. And they're standardized deals. So you're really only negotiating some of the ins and outs.
Mm.
And they still, almost everyone has one. It's a rare case where a top professional athlete in the non-esports world doesn't have some agent or attorney or some third party look over and or negotiate their deals.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of bringing the same model, the same way they're trying to do with the Overwatch League of franchising different places and creating new teams and creating this standalone league that, there's a New York team, there's a Houston team, there's a Philly team, a Chicago team, and all the way you like the Chicago Bulls, you're going to get a Chicago, whatever they're called.
Yeah,
Overwatch.
that's really interesting that you brought that up because that's what I was going to ask next. And I know you wrote a really great piece on that about the Overwatch League and how trademarks are reflective of that. But I'm curious if you think that's going to be a precedent going forward, and if you think that it's going to be something that Riot adopts, or they to a certain extent they have, I guess. But I'm just curious if you think that's going to be the precedent and that's going to be the norm going forward.
I mean, I think that it's going to be based on how well received this is. As I brought up in that article, there's this market in particular, and what makes it very valuable to branders and investors is very brand identified. We like this team. This is our team. Fnatic, Evil Geniuses. This is who we've been watching. We follow who they sign. We root for them. We buy their stuff. I'm in New York City and I never noticed it before, and now I'm starting to notice random people walking around with an esports thing, an esport jersey, a backpack that has it. This
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere you work is a New York Yankee hat. Everywhere is Jets, Giants, Knicks, everywhere. And this is starting to become part of just the general, in America. And obviously in Korea and other places, it's a different story. They're already rock stars. But considering what it comes to, this is a very identified demographic. So I think it will be interesting to see if people are like, oh, we love the Chicago StarCraft team. Not that we love Cloud9. Even though those are the same, guys that were playing Cloud9's team,
Mm-hmm.
And it might be interesting, kind of what I pointed out, to see if there are new rivalries, the way the Red Sox and Yankees have this rivalry. Maybe it becomes something like that, where you have these guys that are competing on their other teams in different competitions, And maybe the Boston team has 2 guys from Cloud9 and 2 guys from Fnatic Overwatch team, and they're on the Boston team. And it's nice to see these guys that are competing in other stuff on the same team. You see 2 guys that everyone identifies with that has fans from, their team and the other team potentially rooting together for their guys playing for Overwatch Boston. So I think that it'll be interesting. And
yeah, that's an interesting, perspective that, would be kind of neat to see. I can see where you're going with that for sure. Now, I'd like to flip it on you a little bit and ask you, what's been your biggest accomplishment so far in your career?
I mean, I definitely feel like about a few months ago I had, signed a pretty big team owner and manager in Overwatch. So, I've been kind of navigating him, handling his legal matters, and,
awesome.
kind of seeing what's on the horizon. So it's been interesting because he has some, high-level connections. So he's like 2 days ahead of the news. Like he told me like a couple of days before, oh, Philly's getting a team. Oh, Hirsch is doing that,
Yep.
So it's very interesting to have someone that connected and that in tune with what's going on at the higher level, where like I know what's happening 2 days before ESPN reports it. And, that to me is very interesting. And, linking up with this agency, they have some pretty impressive Overwatch and League of Legends players and some top CSGO girls. And I'm excited to kind of see where it goes from here. They're working on some pretty big deals, especially in the branding side, in effort to kind of increase the profile. And that, I guess, kind of coincides with what I was saying with, players coming together in new teams, actually trying to add that aspect to it, where you have the rivalry between players. Maybe you have 2 rivals that faced each other in an intense battle during, when they're on FaZe and Cloud9, but then they're together in Overwatch Boston, and, is there going to be hostility? Isn't there going to be, like, you start having storylines based on the players more than just how the team does and stuff, which is, I think, what brands and marketers and the overall industry has to shift to for everyone to make more money. Where you have LeBron and Steph Curry and Durant and Eli Manning and Peyton, like, they have standalone value, where, like, these people have this brow, from the social media to noticeability, marketability, and that's kind of the next step.
What's been some of the best advice someone has ever given you?
I mean, keep at it. You never know what's going to happen. That's what I think is the most interesting thing. The worst they can say is no. That's really what it comes down to. Is like that, to me, is always my thing. And but reach out to people. Be ambitious. Like they said, the worst that they can say is no or ignore you. No one's gonna be, oh, how dare you friend me on LinkedIn because I run this and you want some advice. Like, that would be the very, very rare, if ever happened, reaction. I think that either they're just not going to answer or, like, maybe they want to counsel or mentor people. There's a lot of people that will give you 5 minutes to have, a conversation, an email, just for who knows what's going to happen, because you never know who that person's going to be. You're never going to know when that's going to reciprocate. And, I've met some very interesting people that, a couple years later, it's like, oh, wow, you're there? So glad that you came, I'm so glad you came to my networking events, and, I hope you had a good time. Can you help me? So, I think that you should never be afraid of failure, and, that's
awesome.
My advice to the universe.
Now, talking about esports in general, when you think about what esports needs to do or could possibly do, what do you think the esports industry needs to continue to grow and be successful?
I mean, I think that what they're doing with this league is having a player organization. I think there needs to be some kind of player dispute organization arbitration thing. The same way the NFL has arbitration for salary disputes, because
is there anyone doing that?
What?
Is there anyone doing that yet?
No, I even actually talked to the guys at Blizzard and kind of suggested this to them because, there's all these disputes. Some of them come public. I think the guys at Renegades had some kind of issue recently, like denial, where like this guy says you didn't pay me. This guy, there's just so much he said, she said, and once you start getting attorneys involved, it starts getting really expensive for everybody and very prohibitive. And considering I've kind of explored these cases on both the player side as well as the organization side, I could see where the disconnect is. They think they're entitled to this, the team thinks they're entitled to this, and without really a third-party mediator, arbitrator that takes away the looming exorbitant legal fees that it could be for everyone, I think things get settled much more easily. And, right now that doesn't exist. So if you have an issue with players or a team not paying or a sponsor not fulfilling their obligation, you really kind of have to deal with it the legal route or go public with it. And, you're going to start on Twitter saying, oh, this guy didn't pay me, da, 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 and all the news outlets pick up on it. Like, is that really going to get your issue settled? Are the people that you just said that about really going to want to come to the table and negotiate with you and make you happy? So, I think that's something that's, more confidential, more neutral, that's like, okay, well, you're right, but you're not as right as you think you are, and you're not as right as you think you are. And, as someone who's kind of gone through some of these arbitration proceedings, I think that was the best thing. Where there's someone who's competent, where it's like, everyone respects what they have to say. And this person knows what they're talking about. They're well-versed in the case, but they don't have a stake in the outcome either way. They're not getting paid by one of the parties. They're not getting a percentage of the recovery. Their job is to come to a settlement and a solution. And not everyone's going to win. And that's part of life. Like, you're not going to win if it goes to court and you have a long, drawn-out battle that influences the player's productivity, makes them focus on this. Or, the organization has to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars, months, if not longer, for any resolution. Those things aren't going to help anybody. So if there was like a kind of a body of competent people that can wade through all of the fluff and false, pretense, like, oh, you did this and this and this, and you try to make it sound a bit more detrimental than it might have been.
Right.
And you need someone to be like, okay, that's nice, but that's not really what happened. You know what I mean? You can try to spin it however you want, but that's not the full truth.
So, obviously, you can't speak to anything that you have gone through or anything like that, and every situation is probably unique and different, but what's your advice for someone who is maybe going through some of those issues right now? Like, maybe they competed for a team and the team didn't pay, or the tournament didn't pay the team. What is some of your advice for someone? Obviously, you want to probably get help from an attorney to look at the situation and see if there's a way for them to help. But what else could someone do to kind of figure that situation out?
I mean, realistically, that's probably your only recourse. I think if you wanted to, send some kind of letters, essentially you want to have your case stated of why they didn't do what they're supposed to do. And if there's a contract that's the basis for your arrangement, you want to kind of explain and point out what obligation they didn't fulfill and why they didn't do it. So, something like you said, a tournament, you signed up for a tournament, you paid your entrance fee, and the tournament says you pay this fee. If you come in fourth place, you get this much money. It will be transferred to your bank account. It will be taxed like this. Send us an invoice. Have a nice day. And you fulfilled all of that, then they're in breach. So whether you as an organization, you as a player representative, you as the player's agent, attorney, the agreement will probably say, okay, you have to notify us of our breach. We have X amount of days to clear. There's procedures in most standard, if not all, agreements that outline how breaches are handled, how all of these mechanisms come forward. If we are late, what you can do, all of these different things. If I don't pay you, what are your options? Can you not withhold something? Can you not play? Do you not have to do certain things? Can you leave? Like if you're a player and you don't get a certain amount of money by a certain time, you have the obligation to leave with it free and clear. All of these things are all based on the contract. And, depending on how long and if you had an attorney look over it or not, you might look at agreement or finally get an attorney to look at it and realize, like, wow. And I've had that more times than I care to say. Like, I don't want to be the guy that told you so. I hate being the guy that I told you so.
Mm-hmm.
But God, man, I told you so. And it almost pains me when I'm looking through this and I'm like smirking or like I'm sitting in the office and I'm like kind of looking through something with someone there and I'm just like sighing, like, wow, like, you really signed this? Like, and they're like, oh, well, and you try to do what you can, but to try to play catch up after the fact is much harder. And that goes with trademarks to signing contracts to disputes. It's much harder to play catch up after you make a mistake than dealing with it before it happened. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there are really any other ways for someone to deal with it at this point. You could try to go to the league and whatever, but again, that's probably what they're going to say to you. I don't know. As a non-player, but they might say, "Oh, well, it's between you guys, so you handle it."
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not signed to the league. Whereas, like, if you're an NFL player, your NFL team didn't pay you. You potentially go to the NFLPA, which is a players' association, to represent you. You can go to the NFL Commissioner League, which is, they're not the New York Jets. They're not the Chicago Bears. They're an independent organization that has, people that deal with this.
Yeah. Now, awesome. Yeah, that's some really great advice. Now, I want to end on this, and it's something I think you'll have a unique perspective on. You mentioned the player association kind of thing, but what other opportunities are there to make an impact in esports, whether it's from a career standpoint or for someone who wants to, make some money in esports? Like, where are the opportunities to create a really good career and make a good living for yourself in esports?
That's a very good question. I mean, from my understanding, no one's really making that good of that most of these teams with these investments are going for player spot, to kind of keep it going. There's no super profitable team like, the Jets or the Cowboys worth $2 billion or something like Forbes kind of. There are no organizations that are worth that. I think that a lot of the whole entire thing is kind of based on speculation and what other sports are doing and kind of the initial reaction that they're getting. So realistically, in 5 years from now, this could be what everyone thinks it's going to be, or, who knows what it's going to be. Maybe it's going to be more virtual reality esports where, like, all the viewers are wearing virtual reality headsets, so, like, you're really in the game. And maybe figuring out who can bring the best fan experience or how you can get involved in that might be the new way. I don't know if more organizations, more kind of people competing for the same pot, the same player pool is, going to work.
Yeah, and technology is changing so rapidly that this whole thing could look very different, like you said, in 5 years.
Yeah, like, imagine if, like, you're playing Madden and, like, you have, like, a helmet on and, like, you're actually kind of throwing the ball.
Yeah, and like the coach is talking through your earpiece and everything, and it's, like, super realistic. Yeah.
And, like, yeah, like, you're a fan in the stand now with the virtual reality. So, like, now you have a different view. So you are on the 50-yard line. Now you're at the 20-yard line. Now you're in the end zone. And you can kind of keep moving around the stadium looking at it from different perspectives while watching your favorite Madden gamer competing in the tournament. I don't know if that kind of exists, but that might be where it goes.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is really exciting to me, and I think there's a few startups that are doing stuff in, like, AR and VR as it relates to sports and things like that, but it's super interesting to see where the industry is going to go with all of the technology and how quickly things are advancing. I think virtual reality is still a pretty far ways out, but I think it's going to be fun to see what happens in the next 5 years with it.
Yeah, I mean, more of my office is around the corner is a VR world. I like virtual reality world where, like, you can go in and you can play Fruit Ninja. And there's, like, some other kind of interactive games, and I've never seen that before. And I just walked into the front desk and I'm like, what is this place? And that's what they said. And, like, for, like, a certain amount of money, you can go in for 5 hours and do whatever you want and play games and, take pictures and have a good time. So,
Yeah.
the world
Awesome.
is changing, and esports are definitely the future.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, awesome. Thanks, Justin, for joining me. I had a lot of fun talking to you, and I got a lot of wisdom from what you said, and I think I learned a lot and got a lot of perspective from the legal side of things. So thanks for coming on the show and sharing some perspective and time with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And, who knows? Maybe in a couple months, or who knows? Maybe I'll be back and we'll talk about something else.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I'm sure there'll be plenty of topics to talk about, and we'll have to have you on again in the future.
Have a good night.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. And with that, I just want to remind everyone that if this all goes as planned, this show is just the beginning. Hey guys, real quick before you go, I just want to say thanks for listening and supporting the show. It really means a lot to me that you like it, and I hope that if you found some value from this podcast, that you'll share it on Twitter or on Instagram or Facebook, anywhere that you have a social media presence. I would love it if you would just share it with 3 to 4 people that might be interested in it. It would absolutely mean the world to me. It would help me get my name out there, help me get the podcast out there. I do this solely for the love of esports and for the love of getting to know people and hearing the stories of esports that I think are so awesome. So please, if you got value from this, if you enjoyed it, please share it with someone who you think might like it. And with that, I will see you next time. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it.